cut into it?
Yeah, of course. Right to it. I mean,
Just
what else is
jump
there to
right
do? So we just finished watching Perfume, the story of a murderer.
Yes.
This one is a bit alarming because we're kind of going out of protocol because we've both seen this movie before.
Yeah.
I've only ever seen this movie one time prior to seeing it right now, and it was a long time ago. It was a different Jose, most certainly.
That was probably, more than a decade ago now that it came out.
Oh, for sure. I've updated my firmware so many times. Yeah. I don't even know that guy anymore. So, because of that, we figured that it would be okay and you guys would allow us to break the rules this one time maybe. Nah, we'll probably do it again. And check out this, what is genuinely a great movie. Now that I have basked in the glow of the awesome
For
scent.
the second time, yeah.
I can really say that the movie, both in cinematography and in detail, because we managed to get the Blu-ray edition of it, and oh my goodness,
Yeah,
it is leaps and bounds to whatever LCD kind of 720p version we might have seen back in 2008, 2009 maybe.
So that made like a difference for you when you were watching it? Like it
Oh,
hit
it
you
drew
better?
me in quite a lot.
Oh,
And
that's
yeah.
interesting.
Because the movie, for the most part, is lacking in main dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly narrator driven.
Yeah.
And for at least a good maybe 15 minutes, I can only imagine, of the movie, Jean-Baptiste is still only a child and he doesn't even speak. They even make note of the fact that he doesn't speak until he's 5.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I find that now that I've seen the more detailed version, I can see how the visuals do a lot more of the heavy lifting in terms of giving you that necessary exposition, that nonverbal exposition that I will admit was kind of lacking the first time I watched it.
That's true. They do use a lot of the, that's like those, especially in the beginning, those quick cuts to, like, he's smelling the maggots and he's smelling the dirt and he's smelling the rats as they crawl around the place. Sort of those quick shots, and probably the more vibrant those things, the more they're going to stick in your mind. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's one thing I've seen the movie quite a few times. I don't know how many times, just because I think it's fascinating. I think it's one of the movies that, like, truly slips under the radar of the modern pop culture, the what everybody's watching kind of movies at the time. It even has Alan Rickman and Dustin Hoffman, pretty decent actors.
Kind of snuck in there, really.
Yeah.
Because they play kind of quite the secondary roles to
Right. To
the genuine plot of the movie.
And I had never heard about this movie. I never saw it in theaters. Mm-hmm. Maybe it just...
Yeah, what was your inception into this movie?
I used to live with this guy years ago that he was a bartender, and one of his hobbies was to pirate movies and burn them onto DVDs. Like, far before, like I think I don't know. I was a pretty young guy at the time, and I didn't understand what he was doing because it was kind of in the early days of pirating and shit. But that's what he would do, is he would either download shit or he would rent movies from Blockbuster and burn them and then just keep them for his personal collection. So I got to dive into his personal collection of randomness, which is where I found all of the great movies.
So through evil deeds.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's a pretty cool origin story.
Oh, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, but he had it in his binder. He said, watch this. I watched it. I try to make as many people as I can watch it, because it's one of the most unique movies I've ever seen, and it tells one of the most unique stories I've ever heard.
It's like romantic true crime.
Yeah.
Is really the juxtapositional genres that I found of it. It's like you're kind of following the story of this sociopathic young man who, unfortunately, because of his upbringing, and you can most certainly tell it's because of his upbringing, he lacks the capacity to really be able to connect with people, and he objectifies everything to the point that he wants to distill beauty.
Right.
In this case, the women that infatuate him.
Yeah. Yeah, he really the more the more I've been thinking about this movie, it strikes me as less of like a crime drama, which I think is what it's probably listed as, but to me it seems more like a superhero movie. It has all of these markers of a superhero or supervillain, depending on how you want to look at him and how it winds up in the end, and we can get into that. But at the beginning especially, he's essentially born an orphan because his mother dies immediately after he's born, and he's given up to an orphanage, which is one of there's Batman, Superman, you go down the line, but he has all these tag markers of a superhero, of a person with superpowers, because his superpower, as lame as it is to be able to smell everything down to its finest detail and eventually up in to great distances from himself.
Yeah, he's like a human greyhound.
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah. The way.
No, wait. Sorry, greyhounds just run fast. What are the kind of dogs that smell really well?
Bloodhounds.
Bloodhounds.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, the track.
Yeah.
But in that way, he's kind of like the way that I envision him. If I were to envision him as a superhero, just kind of outside of the context of the movie, it'd be like Daredevil, where he can sort of see the world around him through his other senses. And that really strikes me as, especially the beginning of that movie, the way that he's able to kind of smell into and out of things without being near them. It's like it really reinforces, like, this is kind of a superpower. He's an orphan, he's got a superpower. These are like the two beginning bubbles of a really good superhero story.
It's very true, especially considering that he also fills in the checks of being the other. Because although the movie doesn't do that good of a job, aside from the narrator mentioning it every once in a while, he doesn't have a scent. Like, he himself doesn't have a particular smell to him. So, and that's the reason why he can sneak up on people. He can walk past guard dogs and things like that. And that kind of situation puts him as an outcast, essentially, because people can't really peg him in any particular way. They can't. I would also imagine, because people are so used to always thinking the worst of the other, that because they can't get a peg on him relative to his smell, they automatically have to think the worst about him. And I bet that hurts. I bet that could only add to the sociopathy, especially having grown up in a horrible, horrible orphanage, and then having been sent out to work at a tannery.
Yep, essentially sold into indentured slavery. Yeah. And
also, from what I thought as I watched his birth scene, it kind of seemed to me like the entire reason why he came into the world is because he hated it. He hated the smell and everything of it so much that it kind of seemed like the baby kind of wanted to get revenge on everyone.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's not the way that I took it in. But
because if you recall, when they still believe that he's a stillborn, they showcase the maggots and the rats and all the fish and the guts, as you were saying before, and it's that catalyst that causes him to actually end up crying, and it's his cries that then put his mother to death. And it never stops from there. If we want to think deterministically, right, where one cause begets another, that is pretty much the beginning of his murderous spree. Because his first homicide, if you really want to peg it all on Jean-Baptiste, since we're already considering him a bad guy, was his mother's death. Yeah. Like, if he would have just died quietly like the rest of his siblings, she would have just been fine.
Oh, Jesus.
Exactly, right? It's horrible, but at the same time, that's the kind of multidimensionality you have to look at it from, right? Because his mom was also a person. She lived a very, very hard life. Yeah. And it most certainly does not seem to me that she deserved the gallows for presupposing that this kid was also going to come out stillborn. It's like...
Yeah, if it was the case for the last 5. That's an interesting take on it. I never thought of it like that. I guess the way that I always took it in was that it was kind of an offshoot of his already latent superpower or whatever. The fact that he could smell everything so distinctly was sort of the reason that he clung to life. That's what I always thought. But it's a pretty good argument that you made.
I think that we can nest each other's arguments within each other because I agree the fact that it was his superpower becoming stronger as he drew more life that also caused him to get smell nastier and nastier things. But you always have to think about it psychologically in the sense that even if that is a good thing in relation to waking him up to life, it put a bad thought inside of him from the very moment that he was born. He came in to horrendous, rotting everything around him, and that is essentially the phenomenology of the world as he sees it. And considering, as I said, he goes into a terrible orphanage where the first thing kids want to do is asphyxiate him. Think about what asphyxiating a small infant, even for a couple seconds, will do to the brain development of that infant.
Sure.
Right? I can only imagine how much of that might have eventually caused his inability to speak, his inability to actually be able to communicate with other people in a way that transcended just smelling them all the time.
Yeah.
Because it kind of seemed to be that he came to understand people through just smelling them.
Yeah, just the world in general, almost. That was his only kind of outlet that he had because of the way that he functions, or his body functions. But yeah, that was his one real tie down to the world. That's set him apart from his sociopathy.
Right, and this is what I'm trying to kind of drive at here slowly is the concept of moral luck again. And the fact that, unfortunately for this guy, he didn't ask to be born with the superpower of super smell. He didn't ask to be born in the most horrendous slums of Paris. And so on and so forth. Until, even the most hardline person that is like the pick up by your bootstraps kind of situation, it's like, okay, that's totally fine, but at what age is it exactly the parameter that you can really say now is the time that you need to start picking yourself up by your bootstraps?
Right.
I would say it'd be like 15, 16, and for some people it might be younger, but it most certainly isn't when you're an infant.
Right.
It most certainly isn't all your single digit years, at least not until like the very twilight of them. And because of that, and the horrendous concoctions of his environment, that it's great to cause the whole anti-hero situation for him, because you can't just peg him as a villain all black and white, because you've seen where he comes from, and you've seen the fact that he has had no recourse to be able to actually understand beauty any further than accidentally murdering a girl.
Right, and this is a good, yeah, exactly. He doesn't, the same goes for all of his murders. There's nothing compulsory about them. There's nothing that's violent or sexual about them. It's something that he's trying to accomplish. There's like a goal that he has in mind that's set apart from human values. It's like the reason that I think, like, I don't think you can call him a serial killer. I don't know if he falls into the line of what you could say a serial killing is. Obviously, he, treats the women as objects in a way by using them, but we can get into that. But there's almost nothing premeditated about it when he does start killing people. It just seems like if it fits what he needs, that it's not he's not collecting the women. You know what I mean? He's not planning out their deaths in advance. It's this really weird gray area of that's the question that I don't know, because I listen to a lot of serial killer shit, like what kind of killer is he? You know, how do you define that type of person? This is one thing I think. How do you pin that down? How do you peg that as a characteristic?
Well, as always, if we want to just look at it within the scope of what the movie gives us, I would say that he does evolve or devolve into a serial killer. His first murder was entirely by accident. He seemed like he was genuinely scared by the situation, and that maybe he wanted to talk to the girl after those people were gone, and maybe calm her down or something like that. We can never know now. But I think the fact that it haunted him for so long, kind of, and the fact that he fantasized once he had all of the people in that like super like elated state, that didn't cause him any extra love after seeing the plums fall on the stairs, because of that guilt. And unfortunately, though, it didn't stop him from continuing on and descending down deeper and deeper things. Because
Well, it's the thing that drove him. I mean, that was like, not only was that okay, in that sense, I could say that was kind of a compulsion, but that was also the thing.
I don't think it's about compulsion for him. It's about method. He's methodical.
But it's also part of his like life force or life strength. Like, he literally almost died.
Right, when he thought he wasn't able to do it.
Right. And it was the only thing that brought him back to life, too.
Because he hated the world, I think. Once again, it's like, there's nothing particularly about the world aside from the dream and hope that you can distill. Love, I think, is really what he wanted at the end of the day. And, like, genuine...
That's what he was looking for, was love. And that's where you see at the end of the movie, and throughout the movie, where you can see him reconcile the fact that he's not receiving that, what he can see as like love between people, and it's part of what keeps driving him to try to get at that, and that at the end of the movie, when he's has the entire crowd under his control, that's exactly the look on his face, is that this is still not the love that I was looking for. I've created, spoiler alert, I've created the apocalypse of perfumes that can literally control people, and it's still not the love that I wanted. It can make everybody love everybody else, but it still is not going to give me what I'm missing. That's pretty,
I also think that it's kind of bad for us to judge him, almost, because in the terms of the ethics of the time, he was also an object the entire time. From the moment that he was given to that orphanage, that lady sold him away, the moment that she wasn't able to keep him anymore. And then he was sold and transactioned again to Master Baldini. Right?
Well, the tannery guy first.
The tannery guy. Oh yeah. She gave it to him, and then the tannery guy gave him to Master Baldini, and then Master Baldini finally, only after having given him 100 formulas of new perfumes, did he pretty much bought his freedom essentially from
journeyman's papers. Or
exactly.
So he could travel and do whatever he wanted with his life finally.
Yeah. That's when he finally became a sort of subject, and that's actually the moment that he found out, once he got to the mountains, that he didn't have a smell of his own. And I bet that must have been horrible. The thought that there's no way to smell yourself, or perhaps the consideration that if he doesn't have a smell of his own, he's like kind of already dead. He's like a walking dead kind of person.
It certainly adds to the other, if nothing else. It really hammers it in. That his superpower has nothing to do with himself. That's got to be extremely alienating within your own mind.
Yeah. All you can do with your superpower is take in the world, but you can't ever do anything to give back something out to the world, which I think then cracks the egg in his head. Is like, so how then can I output? Because he's just taking in all the time, to the point that he drives himself to hermithood. And in the mountains, and I can only imagine that his already sociopathic mentalities and having one murder under his belt, just thinking about it all of the time, to the point that he can't even have the smell on him anymore, because he freaks out on the day that, like, the last particle of that girl leaves him.
Yeah.
And that's when he decides that he wants to entirely distill the beauty of that moment, or the beauty of that essence,
That
whatever.
person, yeah. It's kind of hard to nail down. The best word that I think that we can try to attribute to it is beauty. I think that's what he's looking for, longing for. Not necessarily outwards beauty, but kind of both. I think he has a nose for
Well,
it.
you have to remember the fact that they mentioned in the movie through the narration that what he considers a good smell is not the same as what normal people would consider a good smell.
He learns it.
Yeah, he's living an ascended lifestyle, a life through his nose, at least. And because of that, it's kind of hard for us to even begin to conceptualize what exactly makes a good victim for him at that point. And it's unfortunate, because at the same time, you have to consider that within the movie, murdering the women is like a compromise of time for him. It's like, I wanted to pay the prostitute to be able to just let me lather her and take it away from her, but unfortunately, it didn't seem to work out.
Yeah, it's like a consequence of the practice rather than like a planned. It's like every so many dairy cows are gonna die, but we still gotta give milk kind of situation. Yeah, there's nothing malevolent about it.
No, it's just methodical. Again, he's not thinking about these people as subjects insofar as they're people. It seems like, because he's not moved by anything. He's never moved by the girl meeting with Alan Rickman in that hallway. Man, I'm just so horrible with names, but
yeah, I don't
people.
Alan Rickman's good enough.
Yeah, right. But nothing moves him. Nothing dissuades him once he's already on the warpath of wanting to make this hyper perfume.
Well, that was an interesting thing, especially about Alan Rickman's daughter in the movie, was that he saw her as soon as he got into town, and even a little bit beforehand, while he lived in Grass, and for whatever reason, he saved her for the mythical 13th note because of her beauty, because of how much of an impact he thought she could, and that probably is the reason for the darker color of her oil at the end of the movie, was that it was so
dense with beauty.
Dense. Exactly. So thick with her her beauty juices.
Yeah, because it's like
concentrated.
It takes 10,000 roses to make an ounce of
a single ounce of oil.
And it's like he got a whole ton. They made a big point at the end that he had enough to rule the world for as long as he wanted. They just keep sprinkling and dabbing and dabbing.
Yes, this totally ties into the supervillain thing, or the superhero thing. That's this whole movie. The more you watch it, the more it's like, this is what a supervillain would be like in the 1600s with no access to technology and just
and no way to really rule the world in any pragmatic sense.
Right. What are you gonna go to the King of England and he bows at your feet and then what? I mean, how does this work out?
Yeah, the moment always ends, right? And that's kind of exactly what he came to realize at the
end of the
in the middle of the orgy scene, is the fact that none of this really adds up to anything at the end, because another moment happens and another moment happens and no one's still loving him for who he really is. It's always just a cloak. It's kind of like he begins by being a bit of a daredevil you know, anti-hero situation, but then he descends into like a Purple Man, Scarecrow kind of situation with like pheromones and like means to be able to, essentially, I would imagine that it causes like visual psychedelic experiences to a certain degree, because when Master Baldini,
like it was represented,
when Master Baldini took it in, it was like he went back in time. He was genuinely in those good places.
Or in a different place somewhere, like it almost looked like a Greek garden or something.
Exactly, and he got the kiss of the beautiful woman because the part of the beautiful woman was inside of the perfume, essentially.
Yeah. This I think that there's with the sense is the strongest scent is the strongest sense tied to memory. There's like a big power, I think, in that, and I think that's sort of
nostalgia just drives goes crazy when it comes to olfactory things.
That's got to tie into his superpower quite a bit, and I think he realizes that he can do that too. The one thing that I was thinking though when you were saying that was that. Even in the midst of the orgy scene, there is this. It's the reason that you like never really hate him throughout the movie is that it's nothing he ever does is with malevolence. Even in the midst of like, you could say he was trying to save himself from being executed. I don't think he was. I think he was just trying out his brand new superpower come to fruition in a little bottle. You know what I mean? And this was his first experiment to try it. There's something weird that, like, he never, as much as the world shat on him, he never struck back. He never...
Except by murdering women.
A couple women.
A couple
You got...
Okay. Yeah, you flagged our entire channel now, Matt. Good job. Good job.
If you want to make a perfume omelet, you gotta kill a couple women. I think was the
I was making that kind of point earlier that it's like if he like we were saying, it's like the abstraction of beauty. It's like if he would have been a gay man, he might have just absolutely gone and killed like beautiful handsome men, and taken in. Imagine that. It would have been, imagine the alternative of like the stylization of female beauty that causes everyone to just want to have sex and just maybe make more babies. It's like, would the distillation of male beauty, what would that be
violence.
Like? You think so? Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's gonna produce kind of that same like ethereal effect that it had in the comforting kind of compassionate way that it had towards them, it would have to
be the yings to the yang.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It'd probably be a terrible thing to do to the whole world. That would be like a fucking Kurt Vonnegut novel or something that just everything goes to shit. Just
But what about cologne? You don't think that there are means to be able to distill what it means to be a man past just the violent nature of yourself?
No, I don't disagree with that at all.
You just think like the intensity of like what that thing manifested.
To distill it down to its I mean, if we're gonna distill anything down to its like worst or best parts, it's we're dealing in the extremes, so it's gonna be extreme.
You're very correct. You're very correct. Yeah, I mean, to the extremes of having to, live people and then take off the fat in order to be able to get a couple drops.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, like this movie plays a lot with time and space, really, because I can't believe that he managed to get away with so many murders in such confined spaces, because none of the places that he worked at, like that tulip factory or whatever it was, those places look like they were brimming with people all of the time. So
I think that was one of the, at least in the case of this movie, I think that's like editing magic.
No doubt, yeah. It's just
like,
that
you knock a lady out, you bring her back, you fucking roll her up, you roll her out.
Yeah, and because in the movie they make it so whimsical too, because he throws it in the middle of a church. Like, how's he gonna get a naked woman in the middle of a church?
Drag her in there.
Yeah,
drop her down on the floor.
It's like right, and that's not supposed to be making a point. Like,
yeah, no, he's just doing it because he's like, that's where I found her. I'm just bringing her.
Put her right back where he wants. Yeah,
I'm trying not to ruffle any feathers here, guys,
as much as possible.
It's a very altruistic purpose.
Yeah, it's very, very odd.
This is the thing that catches me too on especially the ending, which, as far as movie endings go, although it's broken up into kind of two separate parts, this is one of the best endings in movie history. You can't see it coming. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. It's worth digging into. But the thing that really gets me is that it's like he spent his whole life trying to create this thing that is, in his mind, the perfect thing. And in the end, it kind of is. It's kind of like...
it's materially the best thing for
yeah,
sure.
It's like a liquid heaven or something. You know what I mean? Like, what he creates with his superpower and his sociopathy is a literal, like, bottle of heaven juice or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what really... Although I don't dislike him through the movie, even though he murders people... I never, like, hated him as a character. It's really the thing at the end that solidified for me the fact that he, like, even though he made that shit in a selfish manner because he wanted to, it's also like he brought that to the world. He brought this bottle of heaven to the world, and he shared it with them.
How odd that the most sociopathic and, like, classically evil actions would bring such paradise-like things to the world.
Right.
Through entirely evil, horrible, cold intents. Because we have to judge things based on, I don't know, I guess it depends on what you want to do, right? It's like if you want to judge them by the intentions, then the intentions aren't necessarily that bad relative to looking at him out of his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is an object person, looking at life as other object people. And he's just trying to, do his best for the world, not any one individual. And yeah, it's just very tough because at the same time it's a bit anachronistic on our end because it was, although fictional, still 400 years ago that the situation happened. I know murder is murder, but at the same time, it is really strange dealing with a person that is actually not having, like, a crime of passion and like, everything about the methods and reasons for the murder have a ultimately logical result. Because if you were to bring that to any detective and be like, okay, detective, the reason why I created this, I murdered those 13 girls is for this vial right here. Please open the vial. Put a touch of it in front of your nose and tell me what you see. Alright? That guy would fucking, like in the movie, be like, you are innocent, sir. You are an angel.
Yeah, they all called him an angel.
An angel, exactly.
He'd drop down and suck his dick. That's
yeah,
what
everybody.
That's
everybody.
Every single person in the world.
Mm-hmm. Even the person who had every visceral reason to hate him. The closer and closer he got to him, the more he couldn't even help but weep being next to him. Because what's one daughter to feeling this weird thing?
Is that?
Yeah.
That's what it's like. It has to be like liquid heaven in that bottle. What he had made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So even if you want to look at it and try to admonish him from the intention side, if you look at the results, they're very hard to. It's a very hard case to go against, right? If you look at it from the action side, though, now it gets a little muddier, though, because you are murdering people actively, and again, it's like the intensity of the object-subject importance in the society of the moment, because a lot of people treated each other like horrendous crap throughout the majority of those situations. Even the girl, the redheaded girl, do you remember her name?
No.
No? But the main object of his desire.
Yeah, the 13th note.
Yeah, the 13th note, that's what we'll call her. Yeah. The 13th note, she even had a very terrible life because, as we were saying, her dad was essentially prostituting her in order to be able to try to maintain strong trade deals with that one guy during the party.
Super white-collar prostitution.
Oh, super.
Like, top of the line.
Well, it's aristocratic prostitution.
Right,
That's
right.
what it is, because he needs to have some means of maintaining that giganto maze that he has in the back.
That crazy fucking, in the middle of London somehow.
Is that London that they're at?
I don't know.
Isn't that Grasse? I thought they were in Grasse.
Oh, where the hell is Grasse?
I have no idea.
Do you know what country?
But I know it's not London.
Is it in... Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea. But everybody around them spoke French.
Then it might still have been France. Because he just left Paris, right?
Yeah.
That's all he did.
Yeah,
and he walked.
Why did I think London?
I have no idea.
I don't fucking know, man. Anyway.
Yeah. Small hiccup no matter what. I mean, I don't think that life was all that different anywhere.
I'm sure.
A metropolitan area at that time.
15th century Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably, they did a pretty good job, I think.
No, it was 18th century. He was
18th century?
Yeah, he was born in 1738.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
you looked this up.
Yeah, we did the tiniest nugget of research before we turned on the podcast, and we realized that his birthday, July 17th, 1738, equates to a Cancer zodiac. And although zodiacs, don't mean anything in the real world, thematically through the fiction, you can really see how the conceptualization of him being born under a bad sign. People used to say that all the time, like the boy's born under a bad sign. And he genuinely was, because he acted out his sign perfectly, because... Oh my gosh, yeah, perfectly.
Yeah.
Because a Cancer does not do the things that it does, the destructive things that it does, through any ill intent whatsoever. It just does it because it does it. Mm-hmm. It didn't ask to be born. It didn't ask to be the way that it is. And until it is stopped in some way.
And that's the running theme through his growing up and into adulthood, is that every single person that he comes in contact with eventually dies.
Eventually does come to that. He's a parasite to every person without him really realizing it. Because it's all, and it makes sense too, because it's, like we said, his entire life is a very reciprocal situation. It's never, and it's always a master-slave morality and mentality situation. It can't ever be helped. So because of that, it's like everybody gets their comeuppance at the end when it comes to dealing with him. Like nobody leaves without getting paid, but then soon after.
Immediately after, usually.
Yeah, immediately.
Which is interesting. It's like as soon as he's separated from them, that's when they go.
Mm-hmm. Just like a real parasite.
Yep.
They're the only thing keeping the brittle infrastructure still there as long as they need it. And I think that's one of the reasons why he never died in the tannery. They made it a point that it's like, usually these kids die within 5 years, and this dude just keeps going and going.
Chugging.
Yeah, and they don't give him any special treatment or anything like that. Throughout the entire movie, another thing that I noticed that this time around, but I didn't notice the first time because of the poor quality, was the actual tanning spots and blotches that he had across his body, that although I might have noticed the first time, they were much clearer and in much deeper detail this time around. You could not miss them whatsoever. And they added to the fact that this is a very broken human. You're dealing with a nemesis that has a really tragic origin story, so watch out.
Yeah, you can see it even still when he's walking. His posture, the way he carries himself, is like rigid and almost apish, because his body is so fucking broken from being abused for years and years or whatever. But it totally adds to the tanning scars and all that shit. When he just wobbles like an old man. You know what I mean? Pretty cool.
Yeah,
he does a pretty good job.
And I think another one of the reasons why he falls into such deep sociopathy and alienation toward other people is the fact that Master Baldini tried to instill in him some form of humility toward the craft. But unfortunately, he was hyper good at it. Mm-hmm. He was hyper talented to the point that, unfortunately, talent was enough. Like, there was no need for extra experience. There was no need for that old baloney of you need to take years and time to really master the craft.
10,000 hours.
Yeah, this guy was born with he was Broly. He was he was the he was the legendary Super Saiyan when it came to smelling things.
He was Yang. He was Neo.
Yeah, he was genuinely the one in terms of that particular thing. And I think one of the things that really carves out a good character in terms of a human, right, is the capacity to be able to be humbled and accept the humility and your limitations and the things you genuinely can't do without other people, because the fact that you know for certain that you need other people adds credence to the necessity for altruism and reciprocation at the very least. He didn't have that, right? It's like everything about his life was already horrendous. It's always about how much money can you make me, and he has no boundaries in terms of how far he can go with his experiments, because everything about him is really through a crude scientific lens, and he even talks in that mannerism. He's doing projects, he has vials, he has all of
experiments.
yeah, exactly. He even goes through a chemistry stint where he's trying to distill iron, copper. He's trying to actually make it so all of the world can be diluted down into minutia.
So he can capture it, so he can keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there is kind of a collection type of compulsion there.
He does have one compulsion, that's very true. And that is like the driving compulsion of him always wanting to smell something new. That's what he said. He wants to own all smells.
All of the smells.
Because he has eidetic memory when it comes to his olfactory features.
He knows what things are, even if he doesn't know what the name
of them is, exactly. Yep. And that's exactly why, that's the only reason why he needed a master, is just to be able to put names to things he already knows. Which is kind of a poor reason to need a master, right? It's like you want him to add to the unknown, when in reality, probably you've already smelled everything that he's ever smelled and more. He just happens to have better semantic knowledge than you.
Man. This is a fantastic movie, I gotta say. There are a few gems like this that you can dig into this much.
I think the unfortunate aspect of this movie is the fact that it most certainly requires multiple viewings, and it is long.
It is very long. It could easily lose 15-ish minutes at the conservative end. I don't normally gripe on movies for that kind of thing, because I think that's just what the director is trying to do to get the proper emotion going, or the proper thought, but
I want to agree with the concept of wanting to reduce the movie, but I can't, because I can't think of any one place that I would shed it. No, because it all really, really adds to the entire exposition of the movie, because it's all non-verbal for the most part. It's very, 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 very sparse when it comes to actual dialogue, and
even with the narrator, they do a good job at only bringing that in when you need it, and they tell the rest of the story with the...
And that's essentially the only reason why you peg in the extra 15-20 minutes, is because of all of the extra They have to add in visual features for us to even begin to understand the capacities that he has with his smells. And they just keep driving that home.
They do a really good job. I really like that. It's the same thing as, it reminds me a lot of Requiem for a Dream. That really fast pupil dilation, joint rolling. That Aronofsky fucking blew that shit out of the water. But that's it's kind of that same quick, attention grabbing, really fast, to just kind of like, here's what this, and they do it in Perfume with really gross smelling things, so they can hammer that in.
And I think it just adds to the fleeting nature of everything, and like his kind of ennui that he's feeling all the time, because his most powerful feature is something that is always leaving him all of the time. Every smell is fleeting, and he genuinely feels the loss when he can no longer smell something. And I bet that hurts. right? It's like because you become attached to whatever.
Yeah.
Like he has big feelings. He just doesn't have big feelings for other people. He has them toward the memories of the good smells that he had because he obviously loves and appreciates the memory of the smell of the plum girl far, far more than he would have ever appreciated her as a person. Which just adds to the serial killer aspect of it to me. It's just the fact that it was all, it was all for the thrills.
But was it worth it? In the
Was
end?
what worth it?
Was it worth it to bring the bottle of heaven juice? That's the thing.
Not really, because it didn't do what it was meant to do. Although the results were striking, they were a failure because they didn't actually enact the pure love that he was seeking to elicit. And because of that, I would say that the experiment was in fact a failure, and that's how he viewed it too. It didn't give him. It gave him a very, very powerful proxy of that situation, but not what he actually wanted.
Right.
And I think at that point he realized that it's like, well, unless I go and murder 24 girls next time, and just try to double the dosage over here. And it's like nothing.
Really concentrate that shit.
That's what a real supervillain would have done.
Nice sweet girls, mix it in with some Japanese. I don't know what you're gonna do.
Yeah, just travel the world all over the place trying.
That's Perfume too.
Every single
if
continent.
you haven't seen it yet, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
No, but I'm glad that we rewatched it. I really wanted to get your take on it again because I know you're the deep thinker kind of type, and it helps me to shed light on it just talking to you.
Yeah. There's most certainly plenty to think about just because of the fact that knowing, once again, his origin story just adds so many issues to just wanting to peg him away as an evil, horrible person.
Yeah, that's really one of the really unique things about the movie and his story in general is that I don't know. You can't really call him a good guy. You can't really call him a bad guy. Is he a villain? Is he a hero? He definitely didn't. There's not much net gain, as you pointed out, which is a good argument for maybe better off not having occurred. But
even the movie mentions the fact that when it comes to history, he becomes inconsequential because.
Forgotten in time.
It didn't amount to what he wanted.
Yeah.
The issue with trying to rule the world through smell is that it's so fleeting.
Yeah. What a bummer. I really like.
But it's also very interesting that it can elicit the most extreme of reactions too. 'Cause I don't know if seeing something could cause you to just fall into an orgy-like feeling of elation that you're just down to have sex with whoever is next to you. You just see the beauty in them, that much that you're like, now we have to have sex.
Yeah, this is I've never had that drug, but it sounds pretty cool.
Oh man, it sounds scary because
it sounds frightening.
It just enslaves you because it's like all your inhibitions are lost, and everything that would tell you that perhaps you shouldn't have sex with this person, it's just like, nah, man.
Yeah, God forbid you're standing next to your mother in that crowd.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
And you wake up naked and
thinking
afraid.
About just the minute details of what it means to have a whole crowd and town of people be in the same place and everyone just starts having sex with each other.
Oh, that's horrifying.
Yeah, honestly. Don't think about it too much. Just move right on with it, just like the movie did.
Just like porn. Don't think about how it smells. It's not going to help you out.
Yeah, not whatsoever. Just flat out right there.
Yeah.
Probably just messed it up for somebody. If somebody was probably listening to us for just watching porn.
Well, don't jerk it while you're listening.
Hey man, hey.
Just wait like 50... Yeah,
listener,
okay.
you do you, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Honestly, we don't know your life. We don't know the situations that you're dealing with. Much in the same way that Perfume has, at least to me, seeing a sociopath go through life has actually expanded my capacity for empathy for other people, because you have to consider that it's like, you don't know what those people went through, right? It's like, no, and once again, nobody treated him well for who he was. It was always for what he could do for them. And who knows how much that is because humans suck, and we're just not good at giving true affection and compassion to our fellow kin, or it's because of the fact that he didn't have a scent, and because of that, people were just unable. He's invisible to a certain degree. He's invisible to a big sense.
Yeah.
To the point that a dog can't, he's almost half not there for a dog. And if a dog is asleep, just as seen in the movie, he can just walk right over that dog. That dog, yeah, obviously because the dog's brain is so attached to the olfactory sense, like, if you can't smell it, it's not there. Don't even worry about it.
It's not important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who knows how, and although we're so really good with our eyes, our sense of smell carries a big old burden too. So.
Yeah, he was truly a superhero in more than one regard. Like, he had multiple superpowers. This is a superhero movie.
No, it really is. The more I think about it,
in the 1600s or 1700s. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's a precursor to what a supervillain could be.
It's like a deconstruction, of what a supervillain's failed plans amount to. It's like, here's the intentions of somebody who's a bit narcissistic and sociopathic by nature, not by their own personal design, and mixed along with the fact that they have this ridiculous sensory superpower. It's like, where do we go with that? It's like, oh, well, it leads to murder.
Yeah, every time.
Every time.
It's just like Hancock or I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. Superheroes eventually end up killing people.
Exactly. I mean, the Joker, I think, was it? It's like you live long enough. You either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain.
And that's what happened to Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah.
Before he started killing women. Yeah. And then he kind of turned into the villain because he was killing people. Yeah. Good story though. Good story. Gripping. For 2.5 hours, it moves fast. Yeah,
I enjoyed the fact that they did their best not to divert themselves away from his story. The side plots were all relative to the people that he was preying on, so there was nothing that broke away from the flow of the movie, which is very important for a movie that's 2 hours and 15 minutes long. It's like, that's once again one of the reasons why, although that is a long movie for sure, I personally can't think of any place that I would cut away, because it was all important to be able to genuinely get inside of this guy's mind, just like Alan Rickman's character was continuously getting at, is that the only way we're going to catch this guy, is by actually trying to think the way he does. Like, what does he want in this situation? It's like, the girls are left virgins, so sex is out of the question. And everyone's just like, well, we don't know what to do.
I don't fucking know.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows what that guy wants? That's the coolest thing about him, too, is that you could never suspect. He's making essential oil out of the beauty. Wait, how are you gonna hammer that down in a room of guys? That's never gonna come up.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like, how exactly does one start coming up with that idea, that hypothesis as a...
That's the best, supervillain trait. Is like, you don't know his plan.
You don't know me.
You're never gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
Not in 1783 or whatever year they're fucking in at the end. No, he was... I forget. But yeah, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's like 1750 or something like that. Because he was like mid-20s, early 20s?
Yeah, 20s, 30s, something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He, that, I don't know what I was going to say. I totally forget. We just edit that out.
Whatever.
Let me ask you this. Did you, because we went and looked on IMDb or whatever afterwards, it was like, 54% on Rotten Tomatoes. What would you percentagize that motherfucking movie?
The first time I watched it, probably like around the 60%, just like everybody else.
Right.
And now I would give it a strong 89, 90%. You know, low A for sure. And once again, that drives home what I was saying earlier, and the fact that one of the shortcomings of this movie is the fact that you do have to watch it twice, because it's a thriller. And the first time you watch it, it's quite thrilling trying to figure out what exactly is they're trying to drive at with this guy's
What's
super
gonna
nose.
happen next?
Yeah,
that whole idea.
And once you have already unraveled that situation and you understand no one's coming out of this, X way, and it allows you to then be able to get into the more minute details, just like you would if you were smelling the whole situation. So, if you've ever seen Perfume, listener, and you clicked on this because you think you kind of remember the movie, all right, I would say that. If you manage to get this far without caring, that's awesome. But I would say watch it again.
It's worth it.
It most certainly is, especially watch it again with a lens for criminal psychology. I would say it's very, very fun to try to deconstruct exactly what it is that meshes Jean's origins with his eventual culminations and machinations, really.
Yeah, if you're a fan of true crime or superheroes, I think
or both.
and both are usually you're gonna fall right into it.
And if you think that maybe you want to get a little more artsy with your taste, this movie I will most certainly say has an artsy bend to it for sure. It's the kind of movie that you can at least raise your eyebrow midway to it.
Give a little mini scoff.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
They did have Dustin Hoffman in a wig and makeup, so
yeah, if ever you feel like you're being a bit being left behind in terms of movie talk, being like, well, Perfume. Yeah.
yeah. Nobody's gonna know what the fuck you're talking about because for some reason not many people have seen it, but it's fantastic.
It most certainly flies under the radar. If you had never shown it to me, and if you had never seen it through pirating,
that's what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Once again, through determinist horrible causes and effects, sometimes good things end up happening. It's once again the story of the Chinese farmer. It's like, is that a good thing? Maybe. Is that a bad thing? Maybe. You never really can tell in the moment how things will pan out at the very end. And it's really unfortunate for Jean, because I'm sure that if he would have been able to have some clairvoyance to the fact that his big plan would have never worked, he probably would have just stayed in the mountains forever.
Yeah, he probably would have died in that cave.
He probably would have become sick again with whatever pock disease
whatever
he has inside of him, that automatically his weird sociopathic need to do this thing just drives it back. His immune system is entirely driven by his intentions.
By his superpower. So even though he was driven by these superpowers, the one, and even though we kind of, at the end of the movie, look at him like a super villain, the way that I've always thought about him, and even more so after this viewing, is that he, because of his lack of malevolence, he strikes me as more of a Thanos type character, or more of a Ozymandias from Watchmen type character, where he is his whole life is purpose driven to do this one thing, or to and it's not, it might be selfish, but it's purposeful. He's trying to accomplish something. You know what I mean? It's not an empty, I'm gonna destroy the world type of supervillain, if you were to peg him like that. So that's one thing that I've always thought that kind of separates him from that mind, and another reason that he's hard to peg down.
Right. Once again, because of his amoral scientism to what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because he's just trying to get down to the basic bare bones of reality, essentially. And unless you're against the concept of trying to dig deeper, it's very hard to just automatically throw away what he's doing, because it isn't some it isn't a weird delusion that he's chasing after, as you could easily peg perhaps another type of serial killer. That it's like this guy is just under the weird pretense that he can potentially do this. This guy actually can do this. Mm-hmm. So it once again just throws in a wrench into the black and white machine of morality that mm-hmm. we are so used to in terms of movie going, and perhaps that might be one of the reasons why a lot of the people that in first viewing might be very turned off by it, mm-hmm. because you could be having this kind of inner subconscious dissonance to what you just watched.
Yeah.
It's like, this guy was a fucking dick, and he murdered all those women, fuck that guy. But at the same time, in the back of your mind, I'm sure, hopefully, if you're the kind of person that retains movies long enough to really digest them, you're always thinking, well, I mean, he was a child. He was a child once. Once again, what they always talk about with serial killers and every evil person is mm-hmm. like every single one of these people was a baby at one point, and they were children, and there were mitigating factors in their environment that essentially doomed them to this kind of mentality.
Right. Not many well-kept for children grow up to be serial killers.
No,
usually none.
Exactly. If we're going by averages, very, very low. Yeah. So, it's tough, right? Because I think Sam Harris actually kind of brings this up every once in a while when he talks about the concept of us not really having free will, in the sense that if there is something wrong with your brain that causes you to just divert into sociopathic and antisocial behavior that results in deaths and murders, either because of passion or because of a methodical desire to do amoral science, mm-hmm. if there is something genuinely wrong with your brain that can be found out, that makes it be different from the average brain that might, be more dull, let's say, but not as horrendous to the larger group at hand, can you really say that that person is evil, right? It's like they're just dealt a bad hand, in the same way that you would never ever try to cast moral blame on somebody who was born with paraplegic, mm-hmm. and to try to tell them that the reason why they're in that wheelchair is because they're not trying hard enough, or because they did something bad and when they were babies or something like that.
Right.
Saying that sounds horrendous and immoral. But you can say that to people when you don't have all of the facts right and present, and they're not like out in the exterior for you to see right away. Because that's actually one of the things that Jean, is able to actually access through his distillation, is kind of like this weird portal into people. And in that he's able to see like this weird, through weird inference, like what this person is all about and things like that, without having to speak to them, which is, I guess, fortunate for him since he doesn't actually talk to anybody.
Yeah, it's not important to him. Speech doesn't matter. It doesn't play into what he needs to do with his life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
especially considering that when you talk to somebody, you're not using your sense of smell to really be able to gauge anything about what they're saying. Mm-hmm. Nothing about my words smells a particular way. So he can't gain any extra information through his hyper-accessibility. He's got such a higher bandwidth of information access through his nose that it's like his ears are probably bandwidth. I mean, like dial-up in terms of what he can get. His mouth is null nothing. It's like a telephone, essentially. Right. And that's what it is for all of us.
Right.
And yeah, he's got like a quantum nose almost. It just woof, just far and away, just 5G broadband all the time. It's like, where's that girl?
You can smell crime
that he's causing.
Yeah. I killed a woman. Yeah, shut up, idiot. Yeah. I know.
I smell it. But I think for such a dark movie, we should leave it on that nice light note. Huh?
Keep it fresh.
Yeah,
that's good.
But once again, I hope that you guys enjoyed what we dished out, because we most certainly love doing it.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Yeah, and we'll do it even if you're not here. But if you are, please subscribe, tell your people, and good day and good night.
And good night.